that, I'm gonna introduce the next two speakers, and Mahdi, maybe you can already come and set up. So Mahdi Sedaghat is a postdoc researcher in the COSI group. Yeah, you can just take control. And he's gonna, so Mahdi did his PhD with COSIC on zero-knowledge proof cryptography. He's really an expert in that. And he's also worked, I think, with the people of the SUI project, Miston Labs, on actually applying that zero-knowledge cryptography to give us some really cool new building blocks, in particular ZK login, which is a system where you can log into Web3 protocols using your Web2 credentials. I think Mahdi's going to talk more about that. He's also part-time working as an industry consultant and as a chief scientist at Soundness. So I'll give the floor to Mahdi, and then I will introduce Victor later.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everyone. So today, as you can notice from the title of my talk, I'm gonna talk about ZK proofs or zero-knowledge proofs. So the great advantage of talking in Ethereum community is you're already familiar with this concept by following some previous talks and articles from the big guys like Justin Drake's at DevCon that was presenting this part of the slides, and also the article by Vitalik that was posted last year, that how Ethereum is going to be snarkified, and how Ethereum 3.0 is going to be in the ZK era. So the main purpose of The Verge, to give you some context, is to enable resource-constrained devices like phone and a smartwatch to be able to validate the validity of the blocks, which is like a big step. And it is the magic behind the ZK proofs, or more importantly, ZK snarks. So to give you some statistics on Ethereum ecosystem, as you can see, this is the graph by A66 Crypto. And as you can see, there are a lot of projects that they are working in the ZK space. But unfortunately, or fortunately, most of them these days are focusing on the scalability purposes. But as you can see in the headline, A16Z Crypto believes that the ZK proof is the endgame for blockchain for privacy, scalability, and interoperability. And in this talk, I want to just talk about the privacy, but outside the Ethereum ecosystem, unfortunately. So the rest of the talk is going to be about ZK login that I contributed to this work during my internship at Miston Labs. And Miston Labs, for those of the people who are not familiar, is the company behind SUI blockchain and other projects. You might already heard about Varus and Move smart contract, developed by Aptos and SUI both. But ZK login was deployed on SUI, which is object-centric blockchain. What that means, it means that the objects can be divided either to owned or shared objects. And whenever there is an owned object, you don't need to check them in the same lock, okay? So it gives you a huge improvement in the latency and also the scalability, which gives you around 300,000 transactions per second, and also half a second for the latency. As you can see, in around 1 year, ZK login has become one of the most widely used ZK apps to date, with around 8 million transactions till March 14th. I'm pretty sure it's around 10 million right now, with 2.4 million unique proofs. I will discuss that why there is a difference between the number of the transactions and also the number of the proof generated in the next slides. So the problem statement that we are trying to solve in ZK login is pretty fundamental. As you know, that there is a huge gap between the number of the active Web3 users and Web2 users. So we have maybe around 100 million active Web3 users, according to the statistics, but we have more than 5 billion Web2 users, and there's an order of magnitude gap here. So most of you already onboarded to a wallet, which is MetaMask, is one of the widely used one. And those of the people who are not tried this one, you can try, or the other people can attest. You need to remember 12 to 16 mnemonics, which is equivalent to maybe 4 to 5 passwords in terms of the complexity. And sometimes you've been forced to remember. I think this is the step that usually most of the people stop somehow like bridging the gap, and then afterwards is not possible to continue the process. So once you enter to wallet, you can interact with the chain that you would like to do. And it's mostly, I just want to highlight here that your recovery phrases is somehow giving access to your secret key for making the transactions, okay? So what we do in ZK Login, we combine the OAuth. OAuth stands for Open Authentication Mechanism. I mean, we are not reinventing the wheel. We already saw that how Web2 is creating and bringing a better user experience. You have one single maybe account on Google and you are using for multiple web apps and different applications, and you don't need to create separate accounts for that specific app, okay? So, and then we combine it with ZK Snarks, but we would like to be non-custodial and also user-friendly, and more importantly, privacy preserving, because I want to highlight the importance of the privacy on that respect as well. So a quick summary about the OpenID Connect, which is an extension to OAuth 2.0. There is multiple flow that maybe we are using daily this protocol, that you would like to get some resources from some web apps like LinkedIn, let's say, and then instead of creating and entering your credential on LinkedIn, you'll be redirected to some ID provider, which is like Google, and if you enter your credential correctly, you will get a token. This token is the most important part of this slide, and this token is in the format of the JSON Web Token. Some of you might already have experience working with it. There are some main fields like header, payload, and signature, and this signature is in the format of the RSA signature with SHA-256 in 99% of the times. And in the payload, there are some subfields, including the client ID, which is, the web app. LinkedIn has a separate client ID than other, websites. And there is an issuer ID. Google and Slack or Twitch have separate ID as well. And there is a nonce that the user has a full control on it. You can put whatever that you want. You can put the hash of your wedding image or whatever that you would like. And Google is going to sign it, okay? This is the hint that you can get from my talk, that play with it. Google will sign everything that you would like if you put it on the nonce, okay? And then essentially there is a user ID bad for all of us, that if you're using this mechanism, Google knows that where you have an account, okay? So if you are, having an account on Takeaway, if you have an account on Uber or other places. Because this is static and it's not going to be changed. So now the question that we want to ask and answer is, can we change, and instead of having a secret key for signing the transaction detail, can we replace it with a JSON Web Token? Because this is like somehow a secret key that is only owned by the user who has already entered the credential, okay? So let's take a look on the exact way of and format of these JSON Web Tokens. There are a lot of details. The first one is the issuer ID that I already told you. And I just want to focus on the nonce that I told you before, that you can put whatever that you want, but in ZK Login we put it a formal public key and an expiration time, okay? And a formal public key here is important because we need to have a signature for the integrity purposes for the underlying blockchain. If you are sending 100 ETH, and if you are not signing, someone can change it to 1,000 and it's still your money, okay? So this is the importance of using a signature for the flow of making a transaction. Sounds good. And now someone might ask that, what about address? If this ephemeral public key is not required to be remembered, because if you remember from the recovery phrases, we said that if you remember the recovery phrases, you can retrieve your secret key and you can retrieve your public key. But if this is ephemeral means that you don't need to remember and you can change it if you are changing your device or the session is going to be ended. And what about the address? Because basically we define the address as a hash of the public key, but if we define it in this way, it means that whenever you are changing your device, your address is going to be changed and you need to swap all of your assets from the previous account, which is like a pain. So we define the address in a different way. As you can see, all of these inputs are user dependent and are static. It's the Blake 2 of IDP, which is the identity provider ID, which is like Google, let's say. And we have the client, which is the Sui wallet. And we have also the user ID, which is a constant. But we need to add a salt for the on-chain privacy. And this salt is somehow disconnect the Web 2 and Web 3 identity of the user. Otherwise, Google can sit down and see that what are the transactions that the user is making. Again, here is another image that you can see that how we are fetching the data from the JSON Web Token to define the address. So we need to use the ZK proof because we cannot actually provide and send the JSON Web Token to the validators on chain to check. Otherwise, they can impersonate you. This JSON Web Token is a secret key, and they can enter to any content that you have, like Twitter and other places. So we need to use the ZK snarks to hide some part of the data, and more importantly, the JSON Web Token. So essentially, the relation that we are proving using ZK snarks is in this format, that the user proves, I have a valid JSON Web Token that is signed by Google. Okay, you need to fetch the public key of the Google. And then additionally, you say that the address is consistent with the specs and information in the JSON Web Token. And additionally, the signature that I'm claiming for transaction creation can be verified under the ephemeral public key that is inside the JSON Web Token. Okay, so this is the gist of the protocol. So this is like ZK login in one slide. We have like the credential issuance phase in the first step, and whenever the user wants to make a transaction, it needs to create a ZK proof plus a signature and then send it to Sui blockchain for the finality of the transaction. So some benchmarking. So for the first, the good part of the ZK login is the proof can be reused, and you don't need to create a separate proof for each transaction. And once you create this proof, which takes around 3 seconds right now, we outsource the proof generation because the number of the constraint for, this is deployed using Gross16, by the way, with 1 million R1CS constraints. And unfortunately, it's not possible to generate the proof locally on a browser. And we outsource the proof, and it takes around 3 seconds. But once you create this proof and cache the proof on your browser, you don't need to regenerate it. So this is the demo that you can see. The user just click on the Google, and then it already opened a session with Google, didn't need to enter the credential, but ideally it should create. And it takes around 3 seconds. And now the transaction is done. So by doing this, actually, as I told you before, the proofs are not, doesn't need to be recreated and regenerated. And it was the main reason that I told you 8 million transactions, while there was only 3 million, around 2.5 million generated proofs. So there are maybe 3 times each proof is being used on average. So I just want to leave a question here for the networking session. Why we don't have a similar tool to ZK login on Ethereum that we can discuss afterwards if you're interested. Thank you so much.